Hey friends, it's Gina. Welcome to the Rebookery channel. This video is going to be about my upcoming craft fair, and I'm going to show you guys some of the new journals that I have made to take to the craft fair, which is going to be on Sunday, August 6th in Kansas City, Missouri. I've done a few different collections. I've added some new things to my journals that I hadn't done in previous journals. I'm going to take about 65 journals to this show on Sunday. Let me just show you what I've got going on here. We'll start with these that I have right here in front of me. These are old children's like school books, but I liked keeping the spine what I like to say naked. I didn't cover it with fabric or paper, which I have done previously. And then something else that I've done with this collection of journals is when I bound them, I always like to have my strings on the outside, and I added buttons, just an assortment of buttons for each one of the bindings on these books. So these guys are what I would call bigger journals or thicker journals because they are a little fat. I just took some dress pattern tissue envelopes and put those on the covers, and then this is kind of the theme on the inside. So I want to show you a couple of things that I did that are new to the journals for this collection. So one of the things that I've really gotten into is taking my fabric or my trim and ruffling it or ruching it down the edge here. So I did that a lot in these journals, and I love that effect. So one of the new additions that I've added to these journals is wallpaper envelopes. And so I have quite a collection of wallpaper, and if you're using wallpaper in your journals, you know that there's the old paper type of wallpaper from like the 30s and 40s and 50s and even the 60s. And it's a very porous wallpaper. It takes your ink and your paints and your glue very well. But then once you get into like the 70s, really the 80s and the 90s, the wallpaper becomes vinyl coated. And that is a little bit harder when you're doing art because it's hard to find something that will stick to this. So I have quite a bit of a collection of wallpaper, and I really wanted to find a use for some of this newer wallpaper, this 80s and 90s wallpaper, because I just hate sitting, seeing it sit there and go to waste. So one of the things I've done is I've just stitched a little envelope. So I just stitched up the sides, took a piece of the paper, folded it in half, stitched up the sides, and then I have a little elastic binding that goes around it. Just left this edge raw because I like the junk in junk journals. So I just left this edge raw, and then I just filled it with, this is a cute little card that went with like a school series that was teaching kids how to read. So lots of wallpaper throughout. This is some of the older wallpaper. Lots of music papers, some handmade papers, some ledger paper, another envelope. The only difference with this one is I actually just have a lot more images of kids in here. Put some kids dress pattern tissue paper. Did again the wallpaper envelope here in the center. I have a passion for golden books. This is actually how I started with this whole rebooking, is that I collect little golden books. So I have a whole stash of little golden books that I've been collecting for a very long time. And I just hated seeing ones that were torn apart or marked in, because usually these are kids' first books, and so there's always the books, the golden books that are torn up or written on, and I always hated seeing those, just kind of going in the trash. So that's how I started this whole rebooking, was I started with golden books and turning them into like a journal type of thing. So typically my little golden books, I bind differently. When I first started, I bound these with just rings. And the reason why I did that was because I liked being able to open and close them and add things as I wanted. Now this is my own personal little golden book. This was one of my kids' favorite books. It was falling apart, and so I was able to salvage all of the pages so the story is intact, and then I just added papers to it and just did little scrapbooking or journaling of pictures of my kiddos when they were young. One of the things that my customers always ask me about when I go to a craft fair is, is the whole story intact? And when I make the little golden books with the rings or with the O-wire binding, I'm able to put the story in and keep it intact. And my customers always tell me that they like that because they want to be able to read the story as well as add, memories and notes and things like that. And to me, that was what I envisioned when I first started using these little golden books, was to be able to preserve the story as much as possible because they are such sweet little stories. I have an abundance of these guys that I'm going to be taking. I think I have about 14 that are bound like this. These guys didn't have all of their pages. So I knew that putting them in the O-wires or the rings was going to be difficult because I wouldn't be able to keep the whole story intact. So I thought, well, why not just go ahead, since I'm not going to have to worry about trying to keep the story intact, why not just go ahead and give it a new spine, make it a little thicker, and then sew my signatures in, or stitch my signatures in. So this was the first time that I've done that, and I like how it turned out. I missed not having the whole story. I put all the pages in that I could that were salvageable, but to sit here and read this book, you wouldn't be able to do that with this type of journal. So this would be more of a true junk journal. You're not buying this, or you're not going to use this to read the story. You're actually going to use this to journal in. So let me see if there's anything in here that I added that was new. One of the things, I did this in my sewing on paper video. One of the things I've been doing here is taking two little pieces of recipe pages and then just sewing them and folding them, and they become a pocket. So these guys were loaded with those. And then, oh yeah, I did have something kind of cute in here. So this was, again, trying to find a use for that wallpaper from the 80s and 90s. So I had this piece of vellum, and I just die cut some hearts on the center, stitched it to a piece of wallpaper, and now this becomes a little pocket that you can actually see through because it's got the little holes. There's the back side right there. And then there's the other side of it. And I love the wallpaper because it's got a very toothy back side, and this does take your paint and your inks and all that good stuff. So these guys are going to be new at the craft fair this year, and I love the fabric that I found for the spine here. And then I just put some fabric here and put my buttons on, and this one I put a little bit of tulle when I stitched it up. So yep, there's those two. These came about because I had been collecting these little cookbooks. You see them all the time at thrift stores and estate sales. They look like this. There's Betty Crocker, there's Campbell's Soups, there is Rival Crock Pots, and they have this spiral binding. So the thing with them is that the pages are pretty thin, and they're just kind of a thinner book. I tried to make journals where I left the spiral binding in, and I just wasn't happy with those. So they'd been sitting around for a while, and I was trying to figure out what would be a good way to use these. And so what I came up with was removing the spiral binding altogether, but trying to save the spine and making just a single signature journal, because they are so thin, making just a single signature journal that would just be small and compact, but yet you still get all of the goodies from like a junk journal. So that was my idea for these guys. So I have 10 of them, and each one kind of has a different theme. And I was able to put buttons. I think I put buttons on almost every one inside. They're all pretty much the same, so I'll just show you one and then I'll go and show you what the covers look like. So they're all going to have a pocket on the inside and lots of goodie papers, storybook pages, some notebook paper, those little pockets, wallpaper, calendars, maps, envelopes, and then in here I tucked in a bunch of recipe goodies, some tablet paper, some old schematic paper, just all kinds of goodness. And then I have textured wallpaper for my reinforcement on the inside of the spine, because I needed something thick and I needed something that was going to be pliable so they could open and close. So these are all pretty much the same. This is a fairy themed one. This one I used this beautiful kitty cat wrapping paper, so tried to keep this one with the colors. I love that photograph. Tried to keep this one with a theme of those beautiful colors. This one I put, instead of buttons, I tied a bow and I just put some little die cuts. Same here. Here's another kitty cat one. And I do have an old button there. This one was a little bit larger. This one was actually, I think this was a Hershey's chocolate cookbook. And then this is some of my favorite wrapping paper that I'm almost out of. I love this one. This is a Betty Crocker outdoor cookbook. And this wrapping paper right here is my new favorite. I love it. And I don't even have a full sheet of it. Just these blues and greens are just, they're dreamy. And when I saw the illustrations on the cover, I knew that would match. I didn't want to cover up all of these beautiful illustrations. This is some great wrapping paper that I got from an estate sale, but it had never been out of the package, and it was wrapping paper from Denmark, and I just thought it was so cute. And this is one of my favorite cookbooks. This is a Betty Crocker party cookbook, and it's just got really fun illustrations. It was all about parties and cakes and all that good stuff. And then this floral one right here, this was a Campbell's cookbook. On each one of these, I tried to keep the spine so that you could see that it was a cookbook, but I had to reinforce it. So a lot of them I was able to run through my sewing machine. So you've got some zigzag stitches going down the spines, and that was just adding a little extra reinforcement. Since I wasn't putting anything on this outside, it just kind of helped hold it all together. But again, guys, these are not made by NASA. They're not going to withstand gigantic explosion or whatever. These are just fun little junk journals using a bunch of remnant paper, you know, just something for the owner to have fun with. So that's those guys. The last ones I want to show you are from good old Reader's Digest. I love Reader's Digest because the papers on the covers are always so beautiful. So they're really easy to just embellish. You don't have to put a whole new cover on them. So these guys, again, are a thicker, these guys have 3 signatures, but they're a thicker book and kind of following the same, you know, just got the same random papers and same aspects that those other journals have. But I did a little bit different theme-wise on these. So this one right here is kind of like a fairy woodland theme. It's just got pictures of gardens and trees and flowers. This one is kind of the same way, more butterflies, insects, some wallpaper that has flowers and such. And then this one I really love. This one, I tried to do a mermaid or an ocean theme, but the thing is that I didn't have a lot of vintage mermaid ephemera, and I don't do digitals or anything like that. While I think those are beautiful, that's just not what I do. And so I had to try to find what I could that would fit in this journal and still be ocean theme journal, or ocean theme, mermaid theme, fish theme, all that good stuff, and still keeping it, you know, something vintage or something thrifted. So it really kind of limited me because I didn't have a lot. But what I did find was that I had a lot of fish wallpaper, and I had a lot of fish and sea creatures that were from some guidebooks that I had. So even though there's not a lot of mermaids in here, I was able to find, now that's some newer paper, I was able to find enough vintage or old papers that could keep the theme throughout. And that's just a few of the books that I'm going to take this Sunday to the craft show. A lot of you guys have asked, how did I do on the last show that I had, the one in May? I have to say it went okay. It wasn't the best. The weather was perfect. There were tons of people. I had awesome booth set up, but the problem was that I was inside. And not only was I inside, I was upstairs in a loft, and there were only 5 vendors. So people like literally did not even know we were there. I would say I probably did half of the business that I normally would do, and it was just because of where I was located. You know, that's kind of the way it is. I had chosen to be inside because I was afraid with the weather and everything, and turns out it was a beautiful day. But you know, when you apply to craft fairs, you don't know because you apply months ahead, and so you have to take a gamble. And that time I just happened to take a gamble, and it wasn't the right one. So anyway, it looks to be about 80 degrees this Sunday, so it's not going to be sweltering hot. It's supposed to be nice and sunny. I have a corner booth, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm kind of excited. A couple of you guys have requested for me to do a booth setup video. And while I would love to do one, at my last craft fair, it was just too dark in the loft I was in. So I tried to shoot the video, but you couldn't see it because everything was just too dark. The lighting wasn't right. I will try to shoot a video this Sunday of my booth, put it into a video and post later on to show you guys kind of how I set it up. I'm going to do it a little differently this time since I have a corner booth. I'll be able to have one side opened up to allow traffic on the outside of my booth. Another thing that people ask about is, how do I encourage people to purchase my journals, especially since not everybody that comes to a craft fair is an art journaler or a junk journaler or even knows what those are. And my answer to this is, I have to do a lot of teaching and a lot of talking, but I also bring some examples. So this is an example of a book that I will have at my booth on Sunday. I just have it out. I have a little basket, and in the basket I'll put some of my own art journals. I've found that it's even beneficial if I go ahead and have an art journal and I just have it opened up. And I want them to thumb through it. I want them to see what's inside. Someone asked about, do I worry about people messing up my books? Yes, I do, but I mean, it's a double-edged sword. If I want them to purchase things, I have to show them what they can do with them. So therefore, I need to let people look inside. And I just take some washi tape with me. I have some little baby wipes. I have a glue stick, and you know, I just hope for the best. I haven't had anything get destroyed, knock on wood, and hopefully that won't ever happen. So this is one of the books that I'll have out to let people look through. I also will bring, probably I'll take this one. I try to take some of my sturdier books so that they are easy for people to flip through. And I like to have ones where I've done a lot of art, but I also have a lot of photographs too, so that people can see, oh, you know, these can be for an artist, or oh, these can be for scrapbooking. So having a couple of these guys out is imperative because otherwise your clientele isn't going to know what these are for. Most of the people that come in my booth have never seen an art journal before or have never seen junk journals before. Very rarely do I get people that have seen these or know what to do with them. Now, I do have a lot of repeat customers that have found me at a previous show and then they will come and see me again. Then I also have some wonderful friends on Instagram and some of you guys on YouTube that are in the Kansas City area. So aside from you guys, most of the people do not know what these are. So I find myself, anytime someone comes in, I probably say this 500 times a day, I find myself saying, hi, so these are repurposed books that I've turned into scrapbooks, art journals, junk journals, notebooks, diaries. And my husband, whenever he's with me, he usually gets really tired of hearing that because I literally say it every, 30 seconds every time somebody walks in, because most people have no idea what these are. One of my favorite things to show is when people look at something like this and they say, oh my gosh, how do you do this? And I'll say, well, this book right here is what this looked like before. Giving them a before and after kind of helps wrap their brains around what this whole process is. So I always like to show them, this is what the book looked like before. I glued the pages, it was very raw, and this is what I turned it into. So having lots of examples for them to look at is probably your number one commercial. So a couple of books I won't be taking to my booth are my traveler's notebooks and my inserts. I have found that that is a very specific type of journaler, and it's probably more specific than what I'm going to be getting at this craft show. Now, if this was a stationary craft show, or if this was a craft show all about paper products, then absolutely I would take some inserts to sell. But people that are coming to this are just your general type of person, and this is probably going to be a little too specific. So I won't be taking these. And I also won't be taking this because it's just too big, it's too cumbersome. This is one I am worried about just because it has such a thick spine. I am worried about people touching it and it falling, and plus it's just going to take up way too much space. Opened up, I mean, this is probably 2 foot, and I just don't have 2 foot of space in my booth to give to something like this. So definitely won't be taking this. And the last thing that I won't be taking to this craft fair is binders. I did not do binders for this craft fair, and this is a first. This is the first time I will have gone to a craft fair and not had any of my binder journals. I just ran out of time. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed. Normally I take this one, my handyman, so that people can thumb through and see how to use them, but I won't even be taking this with me because there won't be any, I won't have any of these for sale, so there won't be any point for me to bring this. But that's okay, because that just leaves more binders for me to make later on this fall and hopefully get listed sometime in early fall. So anyway, I feel like this video has drug on forever and ever, and I want to thank you guys for spending time with me. I hope I answered as many of your questions as I possibly could. I will try very hard to film some footage of my booth and then put that in a later video. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. If you like this, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, or share it with a friend. Bye.